The jar of premium roasted garlic marinara sauce didn't just break, it committed an act of domestic terrorism. 1 second, it was perched precariously between Elena's elbow and a bag of kale she had no intention of actually eating. The next, gravity staked its claim. The glass shattered with a violence that seemed disproportionate for a condiment, sending a shrapnel spray of red sludge across the pristine linoleum of aisle 4. It didn't stop at the floor. The blast radius included Elena's brand new white Converse sneakers, the hem of her favorite jeans, and most horrifically, the lower half of the innocent bystander standing 2 feet away. Time seemed to suspend itself in a thick, tomato-scented haze. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed like judgmental insects. Elena froze, her hand still clutching her phone against her ear, her body rigid with the familiar, sinking sensation of absolute mortification. She squeezed her eyes shut, the humiliation rising in her throat like bile. She could feel the heat radiating off her cheeks. Completely unaware that her daughter had just recreated a crime scene in the pasta section of a suburban grocery store. And I just think you're being too picky, Elle," her mother's voice tin-cannied through the speaker. "My neighbor's son is an actuary. He likes hiking, you like walking, right? That's basically hiking without the incline. You just need to be more open." Elena let out a breath that was half sob, half laugh. She opened her eyes, looking down at the red carnage. It was the perfect metaphor for her life. Messy, loud, expensive to fix, and ruining everything it touched. "I'm telling you, Mom, it's hopeless," Elena whispered, her voice cracking. She ignored the stares of a woman with a cart full of organic baby food who was giving her a wide berth, as if clumsiness were contagious. "I'm 34. I'm standing in a puddle of pasta sauce on a Tuesday night. My last boyfriend broke up with me because I was too chaotic and exhausting." She gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles turning white. The ghosting, the constant feeling that she was a puzzle piece from the wrong box suddenly crested. "I am a disaster, Mom," she said, her voice rising just enough to carry over the store's soft jazz music. "No one wants to date me." She said it with such finality, such heavy, absolute conviction, that the air around her seemed to vacuum tight. She waited for the scolding. She waited for the store manager to come running with a mop and a bill for damages. She waited for the stranger she'd splattered to start yelling about dry cleaning bills and personal space. Instead, a deep, calm voice cut through the frequency of her panic. "Well, that's statistically unlikely." Elena flinched. She slowly turned her head, terrified of what she would see. The victim of her marinara explosion was a man, was now coated in a thick, gluggy layer of roasted garlic sauce. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't even frowning. He was kneeling on the floor, inspecting the damage to his boot with the detached curiosity of a scientist examining a new species of moss. He had messy dark hair that looked like he ran his hands through it often, and eyes the color of warm coffee. And he was holding, of all things, a travel pack of wet wipes. "I'm Mark," he said, offering a lopsided grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes. It was a disarming smile, the kind that suggested he was in on a joke she hadn't quite figured out yet. "And honestly, I've seen worse. My 5-year-old once decided to paint our living room walls with Greek yogurt because she wanted to live in a cloud castle. This is just textured decor. Very avant-garde." Elena stared at him, her mouth slightly open. She hurriedly hung up on her mother without a goodbye and shoved the phone into her pocket. "I am so mortified," she stammered, dropping to her knees on the cold floor, heedless of the glass. "I will pay for your jeans. I will pay for your boots. Do you need therapy? I'll pay for that too. I'm usually not this much of a disaster. Okay, that's a lie. I am exactly this much of a disaster, but usually the blast radius is contained to my own apartment." Mark laughed. It was a warm, grounding sound, like a heavy door closing against a storm. He pulled a wipe from the pack and handed it to her before taking one for himself. "Breathe," he said gently. He started wiping the sauce off the toe of his boot with an efficiency that was almost mesmerizing. He didn't dab tentatively. He scrubbed with the confidence of a man who had cleaned up 1,000 unidentifiable spills before breakfast. "It's just tomatoes and gravity. Neither of them are personal attacks." "It feels personal," Elena muttered, taking the wipe. Her hands were shaking. She scrubbed at a spot on the floor, trying to clear a path. I just wanted to make lasagna, a simple lasagna. The universe apparently wants me to order takeout. The universe is indifferent to lasagna, Mark said. But it does seem to have a sense of humor. He paused, looking at her. Hey, don't touch the glass with your bare hands. I've got the big chunks. He moved his hand to intercept hers, his fingers briefly brushing against her wrist. His skin was warm and rough, calloused in a way that suggested he built things or fixed things. Men she dated usually rolled their eyes when she knocked things over. They sighed that specific, heavy exhale that meant here we go again, when she laughed too loud or cried during commercial breaks. They tolerated her chaos until they couldn't anymore. This man was literally covered in her dinner, and he was worried about her cutting her finger. I'm Elena, she said, her voice softer now, the adrenaline beginning to fade into a dull thrum of embarrassment. Nice to meet you, Elena, Mark said without looking up from his task. Although I usually prefer to meet people over coffee rather than condiments. I think I owe you a coffee, she said, or a new wardrobe. Let's stick to coffee for now. The wardrobe has survived worse. A high-pitched sound of rubber solace squeaking on linoleum careened around the corner of the aisle. Daddy, Daddy, look! A small girl, no older than 5 or 6, came skidding to a halt. She was wearing a tutu over leggings and a t-shirt that said Future Paleontologist. Her hair was in 2 uneven pigtails that bounced with her momentum. She was clutching a family-sized box of dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets to her chest like a treasure chest. She looked at Elena, then at Mark, then at the sauce. Uh-oh, the little girl said, her voice echoing in the aisle. Did you make a mess again, Daddy? Elena's heart stopped. She opened her mouth to correct the child, to take the blame, to explain that she was the clumsy tornado that had struck their peaceful shopping trip. But Mark didn't hesitate. He looked at Elena, gave her a quick conspiratorial wink, and then turned his attention to his daughter. Yeah, Bug, Mark said, his voice easy and light. Daddy got a little too excited about spaghetti night, hands slipped. The little girl shook her head, letting out a long, dramatic sigh that sounded eerily like a miniature adult. You have to be careful, Daddy. Grandma says you have butterfingers. Grandma says a lot of things, Mark said, standing up. He wiped his hands on a clean part of his jeans and hoisted the girl, dinosaur nuggets and all, onto his hip. We'll find a store person to help clean up the rest, okay? Elena stared at him, stunned. He had taken the fall. Without hesitation, without knowing her last name, he had absorbed the blame to save her from the judgment of a 5-year-old or perhaps just to make Elena feel less small. It was such a simple kindness, yet it felt monumental. It was a level of emotional generosity she hadn't encountered in years. Mark turned back to Elena. The fluorescent light caught the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. He didn't look at her like she was a mess to be cleaned up. He looked at her like she was a person he wanted to know. So, Mark said, shifting the weight of his daughter on his hip, if you aren't busy ruining other grocery aisles later, maybe we could redeem that coffee offer? Somewhere with plastic cups, just to be safe? Elena looked down at her sauce-patterned sneakers, then back up at him. For the first time all day, the tightness in her chest loosened. I think I can manage a plastic cup, she said, a small, genuine smile breaking through. Great, Mark smiled. I'm Mark, by the way. Oh, wait, I said that. This is Leo. She's the boss. Hi, Leo, Elena said. Hi, Leo said suspiciously. Do you like dinosaurs? I love them, Elena lied immediately. She knew nothing about dinosaurs. Good, Leo decided. Daddy needs help. He spills everything. Mark laughed, and the sounds seemed to vibrate in the air between them, promising that maybe, just maybe, being a disaster wasn't a terminal condition. Maybe it was just an opening line. Come on, Mark said, nodding toward the front of the store. Let's find a mop before security tackles us. As she followed him, watching him make faces at his daughter to make her giggle, Elena thought about the sentence she had screamed into her phone minutes ago. No one wants to date me. She looked at the red footprint Mark left behind on the floor, a mark he made because he stopped to help her. Statistically unlikely, he had said. For the first time in a long time, Elena hoped the statistics were in her favor. The coffee date immediately following the Marinara incident was, by all conventional dating standards, a catastrophe. Mark had a stiff, dried red crust on his jeans that looked disturbingly forensic. They sat in a trendy cafe 3 blocks from the grocery store, clutching their beverages, his a black coffee, hers an oat milk latte in the promised plastic to-go cups. Mark had insisted on the plastic. Insurance, he'd called it, sliding the cup across the table with 2 fingers. Elena stared at the cup. I'm legally required to give you a 10-minute head start. Mark leaned back in his chair. He looked tired. There were fine lines around his eyes and a weary set to his shoulders, but his attention was focused entirely on her. I don't run, Mark said simply. Running wakes up the toddler. They talked for an hour. Or rather, Elena talked for 45 minutes. She told him about her job as a graphic designer and how she once accidentally sent a draft to a client with the placeholder, text insert boring corporate jargon here, still in the header. She told him about her cat, Sir Pouncelot, who had anxiety and required a specific brand of organic salmon pate. She laid it all out, the neuroses, the clumsiness, the frantic energy. It was a strategy she had perfected in her 20s. Show them the crazy early. If they stay, they're brave. If they run, you save time. Mark didn't run. When she finally paused to breathe, he just took a sip of his coffee and said, So, you're passionate. You care about things. And you have a cat with a royal title. I failed to see the problem. The problem, Elena said, gesturing wildly and knocking a sugar packet onto the floor, is that I'm a lot of work. I am high maintenance. I am a storm system. Mark bent down, picked up the sugar packet, and placed it back in the bowl. Elena, he said, holding her gaze. I have a 5-year-old daughter who thinks she's a velociraptor. Do you know how much work a velociraptor is? Compared to getting a toddler to put on shoes in the morning, you're a vacation. He asked for her number. He didn't put it in his phone. He wrote it on a napkin with a pen he produced from his flannel shirt pocket. Old school, she noted. Batteries die, he shrugged. Ink doesn't. The next 2 weeks were a blur of digital ping-pong. Elena was used to men who played games, wait 3 hours to reply, keep the answers vague, never use emojis because it looks eager. Mark texted like a dad. Tuesday, 7 p.m. Leo is asleep. Finally, did you survive the day without destroying any public property? Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. Saw a lady drop a melon at the store. Thought of you. Hope your Wednesday is good. Friday, 9 p.m. I'm watching Frozen for the 400th time. Send help or wine. He was consistent. He was funny. He was safe. And that terrified Elena more than anything. Safety felt like a trap. Safety meant there was something to lose. When you're a disaster, you expect things to break. When things are going well, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop or, in Elena's case, for the other jar to break. She found herself overanalyzing every interaction. Is he bored? Is he just looking for a mom for Leo? Is he going to realize I'm 34 and still don't know how to fold a fitted sheet? Then came the invitation. Saturday, Mark said over the phone on a Thursday night. His voice was rough with sleep. He'd just put Leo down. We're going to the park, the big one by the river. Leo wants to show me her dig site in the sandbox. Come with us. Elena froze in her kitchen. Meeting the kid, that was the third rail. That was the point of no return. Mark, she said, her voice tight. Are you sure? What if I accidentally teach her a swear word? I have a terrible filter. She won't hate you. And she already knows most of the swear words. She just knows not to say them in front of Grandma, Mark laughed. Come on, it's low pressure. Fresh air, swings, and I make excellent sandwiches. Sandwiches? Turkey and Swiss? Crust cut off, I'm a professional. Okay, Elena heard herself say. Okay, but if I traumatize her? I'm billing you for the therapy. Saturday morning dawned bright and terrifyingly clear. Elena changed her outfit 4 times. She needed to look cool aunt, but not trying too hard. Practical enough for a park, but cute enough for a date. She settled on jeans, dark, stain-resistant, a striped tee, and a denim jacket. She checked her purse, wipes, hand sanitizer, 3 granola bars, and a small plastic dinosaur she had panic bought on Amazon 2 days prior. She arrived at the park 10 minutes early. She sat on a bench, watching the ecosystem of the playground. It was a chaotic swirl of screaming children, exhausted parents clutching travel mugs, and the squeak, squeak, squeak of swings. Then she saw them. Mark was walking toward the playground, holding Leo's hand. He looked effortlessly capable in a gray t-shirt and cargo shorts, actual cargo shorts, which on any other man would be a fashion crime, but on him looked like necessary tactical gear. He was carrying a backpack that likely contained the survival equivalent of a small hospital. Leo was skipping. She was wearing mismatched socks, one striped, one polka-dotted, and a bucket hat pulled low over her eyes. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Don't be weird, she told herself. Just be normal. Be a normal human woman who likes children and doesn't destroy things. Elena, Mark spotted her and waved. His face lit up, a genuine, bright expression that made Elena's stomach do a traitorous flip. She walked over, her hands sweating. Hi, you made it. We made it, Mark said. Leo, this is my friend Elena, the one I told you about. Leo stopped skipping. She looked up at Elena, squinting against the sun. The scrutiny of a 5-year-old is heavier than any boardroom performance review. Leo's eyes were dark like her father's, but sharper, searching for weakness. Hi, Leo, Elena said, crouching down so she was eye level. I like your hat. Leo touched the brim of her hat. It's for camouflage, so the T-Rex doesn't see me. Smart, Elena nodded solemnly. T-Rex vision is based on movement, right? Or is that the Velociraptor? It's the T-Rex, Leo said, her face breaking into a wide, gap-toothed grin. You know dinosaurs? I know a little, Elena said. He looked lonely at my house. Leo gasped. She took the toy with reverence. A 3-horn? Good choice? They are herbivores. Right, herbivores. They love salad, Elena improvised. Leo giggled. They eat ferns, silly. She looked at Mark. Daddy, she's funny. Mark looked at Elena over Leo's head. He mouthed the word salad and grinned. Okay, go excavate, Mark told his daughter, pointing toward the sandbox. Stay where I can see you. No eating sand. I only eat sand sometimes. Leo yelled, already running toward the pit. Mark and Elena laid out a blanket on the grass, a safe distance from the chaos but close enough to track the pink bucket hat. Mark unpacked the sandwiches. They were, as promised, crustless and delicious. For 30 minutes, it was perfect. They sat in the sun, Mark telling stories about Leo's latest obsession with space, Elena recounting a disastrous attempt to bake sourdough bread that resulted in a loaf so dense it could be used as a doorstop. But the anxiety was still humming beneath Elena's skin like a low-voltage wire. It was going too well. The manic pixie dream girl. Energy, the novelty of her clumsiness would wear off. Eventually, Mark would realize he was dating a woman who lost her keys daily, forgot appointments, and felt emotions at 110% capacity. He needed a co-captain, not another child to manage. She watched him watching Leo. His gaze was a constant, protective radar. Every time Leo stumbled, his body tensed slightly, ready to spring. He was a rock, and I am water, Elena thought. I just erode things. The incident happened 10 minutes later. Elena, feeling bold, decided to join Leo in the sandbox. I'm going to help with the excavation, she announced. Mark smiled lazily from the blanket. Don't find any buried cat poop. Elena marched over to the sandbox. Leo was deep in a hole. We need to dig deeper, Leo commanded. The bones are in the mantle. Aye, Captain, Elena said. She stepped into the wooden frame of the sandbox. She didn't see the discarded plastic shovel. Her foot landed on the blade, the handle popped up, caught her other shin, and Elena went down. It wasn't a graceful fall. It was a flailing windmill arm collapse. She landed face first in the sand, her hand knocking over Leo's carefully constructed bucket castle. Sand went everywhere, in her mouth, in her eyes, all over the cool ant denim jacket. Silence descended on the sandbox. Elena lay there for a second, staring at the grains of sand inches from her nose. This is it, she thought. The humiliations continue. I have destroyed the child's castle. I am a monster. Elena? Leo's voice was small. Elena pushed herself up, spitting out grit. She looked at Leo, terrified the girl would cry. Leo, I am so sorry. I broke the castle. I'm so clumsy. Leo looked at the flattened sand. Then she looked at Elena, who now had a sand beard. Leo started to laugh. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was a belly laugh of pure delight. You look like a sugar cookie. Mark was there in an instant. Everyone okay? I'm fine, Elena said, brushing frantically at her clothes, shame burning her face. I fell again. I ruined the castle. Mark looked at the destruction. Then he looked at Elena, dusting sand off her shoulder with a gentle hand. Castles can be rebuilt. Knees are harder to fix. You okay? I'm fine, she snapped, pulling away from him. The reaction was automatic, a defensive flinch. She marched back to the blanket, sat down, and buried her face in her hands. Mark followed her, sitting down slowly. He didn't speak for a moment. He just handed her a water bottle. You don't have to do this, Elena said into her hands. Her voice was muffled, thick with the threat of tears. Do what? Mark asked calmly. Elena dropped her hands. She looked at him, her eyes stinging from the sand and the emotion. Pretending this is charming? I know I'm a lot, Mark. I'm disorganized. I'm intense. I fall into sandboxes and I come with so much baggage you'd need a luggage cart. You're this stable, single dad superhero. You have a kid to think about. You don't want to date someone you have to take care of. She took a breath, the words tumbling out faster now. I'm the fun girl for 3 weeks. I'm the girl you have adventures with until you realize you need. Someone who remembers to pay the electric bill and doesn't have panic attacks in grocery stores. I'm not stepmom material. I am the cautionary tale. She waited. She waited for the polite letdown, you're right, my life is complicated enough. Mark fell silent. He watched Leo, who was now happily burying the Triceratops in Elena's impact crater. You think being a single dad makes me look for perfection? Mark asked quietly. He turned to her, shifting his body so he blocked out the rest of the park. Elena, look at my life. He gestured to the backpack, to the juice stains on his cargo shorts, to the child currently eating a cracker she had definitely dropped in the sand. My life is chaos, he said. It's sticky hands, lost toys, sleepless nights, and constant noise. It is a series of small emergencies interrupted by snacks. I don't want a museum exhibit. I tried dating perfect. I dated a woman who color-coded her bookshelf and never raised her voice. We lasted 2 months. She looked at Leo like she was a stain on a white rug. He reached out and took Elena's hand. His palm was warm, rough, and steady. He rubbed his thumb over her knuckles, brushing away a few lingering grains of sand. I want someone who knows how to laugh when the jar breaks, Mark said, his voice dropping an octave, intimate and intense. I watched you that day in the store. You didn't blame anyone else. You cared about my jeans before your own shoes. You have a big heart, Elena, a massive, messy, wonderful heart. Elena sniffed, looking down at their joined hands. But the baggage ... double quote. Everyone has baggage, Elle, Mark said firmly. I've got a divorce decree and a fear of failing my kid. You've got what? Anxiety and a tendency to trip over gravity? He lifted her chin with his finger, forcing her to look at him. That's not baggage, Elena, he said, delivering the words with the weight of a vow. That's the cargo. That's just what you're carrying. And I've got 2 strong hands. I can help carry it. Elena stared at him. The wind rustled the trees overhead. The sound of children screaming in the distance faded into background noise. Cargo, she repeated, testing the word. Yeah, valuable stuff, Mark smiled. Besides, Leo likes you. She laughed when you fell. Do you know how hard it is to make her laugh like that? She's a tough critic. She thinks Peppa Pig is derivative. A laugh bubbled up in Elena's chest, surprising her. It broke the dam. She said I look like a sugar cookie. You look like a sugar cookie I'd very much like to kiss, Mark said, his eyes dropping to her lips. Is that okay? Or is it a safety hazard? It might be, Elena whispered, leaning in. I might headbutt you by accident. I'll take the risk, he leaned in. It wasn't a movie kiss, it was better. It tasted like coffee and sunshine. It was grounding. When his lips met hers, the humming wire of anxiety in Elena's veins finally, mercifully, went silent. They broke apart when a small, sandy projectile launched itself onto Mark's back. Group hug. Leo screamed, wrapping her arms around Mark's neck and effectively sandwiching him against Elena. Mark groaned, but he was laughing. He pulled Elena into the embrace, trapping her between his solid chest and his daughter's chaotic energy. See? Mark whispered into Elena's hair as Leo recounted the discovery of a dinosaur bone, which was definitely a twig. You fit right in? As Elena sat there, covered in sand, hugged by a man she was rapidly falling for and a child who thought she was a baked good, she realized something. The statistics didn't matter. The narrative she had written for herself, the one where she was the unlovable disaster, was being rewritten. She wasn't a mess to be cleaned up. She was part of the mess. And for the first time, that felt like exactly where she belonged. The real breaking point, the moment that would either cement their relationship or shatter it like a cheap date, came exactly 1 month later. It started with a molar. Specifically, Mark's lower left molar, which decided to stage a violent protest against his existence on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday, he looked like a chipmunk hoarding acorns and was speaking in vowels. "I can't drive," Mark mumbled over the phone, the words slurred by swelling and exhaustion. "I have to get a root canal at 2 p.m. My mom was supposed to take Leo, but her bingo group is going to Atlantic City. It's the semifinals." Elena didn't hesitate. The words left her mouth before her anxiety could file an objection. "I'll do it. I'll watch Leo." There was a pause on the line, heavy with unspoken concern. "Elena, are you sure?" "It's 4 hours. That's a lot of Leo." She's in a questioning authority phase. "Yesterday she asked me if I was qualified to be her father because I wouldn't let her eat glitter." "I can handle it," Elena said, her voice pitching up an octave. "I am a responsible adult woman. I have a 401k. I own a vacuum cleaner. I can watch a 5-year-old for 4 hours. "Okay," Mark sighed, the relief palpable even through the pain. "You have the key. Godspeed." Elena arrived at Mark's house at 1:45 p.m. armed for war. She had a tote bag packed with what she considered safe, educational, and non-messy activities. She had a color-coded schedule written on a legal pad. 2 o'clock to 2:30, quiet reading. 2:30 to 3:15, structured drawing, pencils only, nitrogen monoxide markers. 3:15 to 4 o'clock, interpretive dance to classical music. She was going to nail this. She was going to prove that she wasn't just the fun, clumsy girlfriend. She was partner material. She was capable of maintaining order. She was a fortress of stability. Mark left with a swollen cheek and a grateful squeeze of her hand. "We are fine," Elena said, standing in the doorway with a posture she hoped conveyed authority. The first hour went surprisingly well. Leo, perhaps sensing the novelty of the situation, agreed to quiet reading. They sat on the rug, Elena reading a book about a badger who opened a bakery, Leo listening with intense focus. "Why doesn't the badger wear pants?" Leo asked at page 4. "Because he's a badger," Elena explained. "But he wears an apron," Leo countered. "That implies he understands clothing. So he's just choosing to be naked underneath." Elena blinked. "Okay, moving on to the structured drawing." The unraveling began at 3:15 p.m. "I don't want to dance to Mozart," Leo announced, crossing her arms. She was wearing her dinosaur t-shirt and a pair of fairy wings she had dug out of a closet. "I want to play Pirates." Elena looked at her schedule. "Pirates isn't on the list, Leo. How about we play Library?" "Pirates," Leo insisted. "We have to sail to Antarctica. The treasure is buried in the snow." "We don't have snow," Elena said reasonably. "It's mid-July. It's 80 degrees outside." Leo looked at her with the pitying expression of a visionary dealing with middle management. "We have imagination, Elena." Elena hesitated. She wanted to be the fun aunt. But she also wanted the house to be standing when Mark got back. "Okay," she compromised. "We can play Pirates. But we stay on the rug. The rug is the ship. If you step off the rug, the sharks get you." "Deal," Leo said. For 20 minutes it was fine. They sailed the rug ship. Elena threw herself into the role, doing a terrible pirate accent that made Leo shriek with laughter. But a pirate ship needs a storm. "The waves are getting higher," Leo screamed, stumbling dramatically. "We need to fortify the hull. Use the pillows." Elena yelled back, caught up in the drama. They stripped the sofa, then the armchairs. They built a wall of cushions. It was innocent. It was contained. "It's snowing," Leo shouted suddenly. "We're hitting the Antarctic shelf. Use the blankets," Elena suggested, grabbing a throw from the couch. No, real snow. Leo's eyes darted to the kitchen. Leo, no, Elena said, her responsible adult alarm finally ringing. We are not making snow. But Leo was already running. I know where Daddy keeps the snow. Elena scrambled after her, socks slipping on the hardwood. She caught up to Leo in the kitchen, but she was too late. Leo had dragged a chair to the counter. She had opened the pantry. She had located the 5-pound bag of King Arthur all-purpose flour. Leo, put the bag down, Elena said, using her best hostage negotiator voice. It's for the atmosphere. Leo argued, clutching the paper bag to her chest. Leo, that is. Leo turned. The bag was heavy, her grip was small. Physics, once again, became Elena's nemesis. The bag slipped from Leo's hands. Elena lunged to catch it. Her hand hit the bag mid-air, not catching it but slapping it. The bag exploded. It wasn't just a spill. It was a detonation. A mushroom cloud of white powder billowed into the air, coating the kitchen island, the floor, the cabinets, and both of them in a thick, choking white mist. Silence fell over the kitchen. Elena stood there, her eyes squeezed shut, tasting raw flour. She slowly opened one eye. The kitchen looked like a bomb had gone off in a bakery. Leo looked like a small, stunned ghost. Uh-oh, Leo whispered. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. This was it, the layout of her failure. Mark left her with a clean house and a clean child, and she had turned his kitchen into a disaster zone. Don't move, Elena whispered. If we move, we track it. I have to sneeze, Leo announced. Don't chew? The sneeze sent a fresh ripple of flour across the room. Elena looked at the clock. 4:45 p.m. Mark would be back any minute. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She grabbed a wet dishcloth. We have to clean this up, now, fast. She dropped to her knees and started wiping. But she had forgotten a crucial rule of chemistry. Flour plus water equals paste. She wasn't cleaning. She was making glue. The white powder turned into a sticky gray sludge that smeared across the hardwood, bonding to the cracks, adhering to her jeans. I'm helping. Leo chirped, grabbing a sponge and smearing a line of sludge across the pristine stainless steel fridge. No, stop! Elena cried, tears pricking her eyes. She sat back on her heels, her hands coated in doughy grime. She looked around. The living room was a wreckage of pillows. The kitchen was a disaster. She was covered in flour. She had failed. I can't do this, she whispered to herself. The old narrative came rushing back like a tidal wave. You are too much. You are chaotic. You ruin things. She wasn't a partner. She was a liability. Mark needed peace. The sound of the front door unlocking was the loudest sound Elena had ever heard. Hello? Mark's voice was thick, muffled by the gauze in his mouth. I'm home. She wanted to turn into flour and simply be swept away. Mark walked into the living room. He stopped. He looked at the pillow fortress that had consumed his furniture. He looked at the trail of white footprints leading to the kitchen. He walked to the kitchen doorway. Elena sat on the floor, surrounded by the gray sludge, her hair white, her face streaked with paste where she had wiped her tears. Leo was standing on the counter, trying to wipe the cabinets with a dry paper towel, making it snow all over again. Mark stood there. He was still wearing his coat. His cheek was swollen. He looked exhausted. Elena scrambled to her feet, slipping slightly in the muck. Mark, I am so sorry. I tried. We were playing pirates and she wanted snow, and I tried to catch it. And then I tried to clean it with water, but that made paste, and I'm going to pay for a professional cleaning service. I'll buy you new floors. I'm so sorry. She was rambling, her breath coming in short gasps. I know this is too much. I know I'm a disaster. You shouldn't have to deal with this after surgery. I should just go. I'll clean it up and go. She couldn't look at him. She stared at his boots, the same boots she had spilled marinara sauce on a month ago. No one wants to date me. The sentence hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. Mark didn't speak. He walked into the kitchen, his boots crunching on the dry flour and squelching on the wet patches. He walked right up to Elena. She flinched, expecting anger, expecting the sigh. Mark reached out and took her hands. His hands were warm. He gently pulled her toward him, ignoring the sludge on her shirt that was now transferring to his jacket. He looked down at her, his eyes soft, crinkled at the corners. He couldn't smile properly because of the numbness, so his expression was a lopsided, half-frozen grin. He said. What? Elena whispered, tears spilling over. Mark cleared his throat, wincing slightly. He spoke slowly, enunciating carefully around the numbness. I said, "Did you make it to Antarctica?" Elena blinked, the tears stopping in their tracks. What? Mark let go of one of her hands to gesture at the room. The snow, you made it to Antarctica. He looked over at Leo. Captain, report. Leo stopped scrubbing the cabinet. She stood at attention on the counter. We hit a blizzard, Daddy. The ship took heavy damage. Elena tried to save the supplies, but the cargo exploded. Mark nodded solemnly. He looked back at Elena. You didn't ruin the kitchen, Elle, he said, his voice raspy. You built a world. I made a mess, Elena argued, her voice trembling. Mark, look at this. It's disgusting. It's chaos. Mark looked at the floor, then he looked at her. I have spent the last 3 years keeping this house clean, Mark said quietly. Since the divorce, I tried to keep everything perfect. Clean floors, clean schedule, no noise. Because I thought if everything was clean, it meant I was doing a good job. I thought chaos meant I was failing. He reached up and brushed a streak of flour off her cheek. But this? He gestured to the white-dusted room. This isn't failure, this is ... it's lived in. He took a step closer, sliding his arms around her waist, pulling her messy, pasty body against his clean clothes. I don't want a museum, Elena. I told you that. Museums are cold. I want a home. And homes get messy. Elena rested her forehead against his chest. The knot of anxiety in her stomach, the one that had been pulled tight for 34 years, began to loosen. I really am sorry about the floor, though. It's going to be sticky for weeks. Then we'll wear socks, Mark said. Leo? Yes, Daddy. Are we still in the storm? Yes, it's a whiteout. Good, Mark said. He looked down at Elena. Then I guess we're trapped here, together. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. It was a dusty, sticky, slightly medicinal-smelling kiss. And it was the most romantic thing that had ever happened to her. I love you, Mark said. The words were mumbled. They were barely intelligible through the Novocaine, but Elena heard them. She pulled back, searching his eyes. You're high on painkillers. I took Tylenol, Mark corrected. I am stone cold sober. And I love you. I love that you built a pirate ship. I love that you tried to catch the flower. I love that you're currently turning into a papier match statue in my arms. Elena laughed, a wet, choking sound. I love you too. Even though you look like a chipmunk. Daddy, look! Leo screamed. They broke apart to look. Leo had found the bag of chocolate chips Elena had brought for baking the baking that never happened. She had opened the bag and was scattering the chips into the flour on the floor. Penguin poop? Leo declared. Mark looked at Elena. Elena looked at Mark. Mark shrugged. It's statistically likely. He picked up a handful of flour from the counter and blew it gently toward Elena, creating a small snowy cloud between them. Welcome to the expedition, he said. Elena realized then that she hadn't needed to change who she was to be lovable. She didn't need to be the perfect, organized, stain-free woman. She just needed to find the person who was willing to get dirty with her. She grabbed a handful of flour. You know, she said, a mischievous glint entering her eye. If we're trapped in a blizzard ... we should probably make snow angels. Mark groaned, but he was already sinking to the floor. My knees are going to regret this. Your heart won't, Elena said, dropping down beside him into the mess. As they lay there on the kitchen floor, making angels in the wreckage of a 5-pound bag of flour, listening to a 5-year-old scream about penguins, Elena finally rewrote the headline in her head. It wasn't "No one wants to date me," it was finally "Someone wants to play with me." The instruction manual for the easy install floating shelves was a liar, a bold-faced, malicious liar. Elena stood in the middle of the living room, their living room, holding a level in one hand and the power drill in the other. She was currently vibrating with a frequency of stress that could probably shatter glass. It had been 1 year, 2 months, and 14 days since the Marinara incident. It had been 6 months since she officially moved in. And today was the day she was going to prove that she could contribute to the household infrastructure without causing an insurance claim. You've been staring at that wall for 20 minutes, Mark said. He was sitting on the sofa, folding laundry. He wasn't looking at her, but she could hear the smile in his voice. Do you want me to hold the ladder? I do not need help, Elena declared, adjusting her safety goggles. She had bought safety goggles. Mark had suggested them after the sparkling water explosion of June. I am an independent woman capable of home improvement. I am channeling my inner HGTV host. Okay, Mark said, shaking out one of Leo's dinosaur t-shirts. Just remember, the stud finder is the tool that beeps, not the one that spins. I know what a stud finder is, Elena muttered. She placed the device against the wall. It beeped immediately. Found one, she announced triumphantly. That's me, Mark deadpanned. Elena groaned, but she couldn't fight the smile. You're impossible. I'm helpful. Also, you're holding it backward. She looked. She was holding it backward. She sighed, lowering the tool. This was the rhythm of their life now. It wasn't tea that Elena had stopped being chaotic last week. It was just the background noise of a happy home. But today felt different. Today, the stakes felt higher because of what was sitting in her nightstand drawer. A small velvet box she had found while looking for a phone charger 3 days ago. She hadn't opened it. She hadn't told him she found it, but the knowledge of it was burning a hole in her brain. He's going to ask, she thought, panic fluttering in her chest. The fear was that he would, and that eventually, a year or 10 years down the line, the charm of the beautiful disaster would fade, and he'd be left with just a disaster. Mark? She asked, her voice small. He stopped folding. The shift in her tone was subtle, but he caught it instantly. He put the laundry basket down. Yeah? Why do we need shelves? We don't, he said easily. You bought them because you said the wall looked naked and judgmental. Right, she said. She put the drill down. I think I need to go for a walk. I need air. Mark studied her face. He didn't push. He didn't ask why the sudden mood swing. He just stood up, walked over, and kissed her forehead. Okay, take your time. I'll make sure the wall doesn't judge you while you're gone. Elena walked. She walked past the park where she had fallen into the sandbox. She walked past the coffee shop where she had spilled sugar. She walked until her feet hurt and her mind quieted down. She ended up, inevitably, at the grocery store. She grabbed a basket not because she needed anything, but because walking around without one felt suspicious. She wandered through the produce section, touching the avocados. She was thinking about forever. Forever was a long time to keep a lid on things. Forever was a long time to try not to break the good china. Mark was steady. Mark was the ground. If she said yes, she would be planting herself in his soil. What if she was a weed? I knew I'd find you here. She spun around. Mark was standing at the end of aisle 4, the pasta aisle. He wasn't wearing his usual flannel. He was wearing a button-down shirt and the nice boots. He looked nervous. Mark never looked nervous. You tracked me? Elena asked, clutching a bag of kale she would never eat. Leo told me you went to the thinking place, Mark said, walking toward her. She said you go to the store when your brain gets too loud. She's too observant, Elena murmured. I need to stop teaching her psychology. Mark stopped 3 feet away from her. He looked at the floor. Specifically, he looked at a faint, discolored stain on the linoleum near the marinara section. You remember this spot? He asked. Hard to forget, Elena said. I ruined your favorite jeans here. I still have those jeans, Mark said. I kept them. Why? They look like a crime scene. Because, Mark said, stepping closer. He gently took the basket of kale from her hand and set it on the floor. That was the day my life got interesting. Before that, everything was just scheduled. It was gray. Then you came in and exploded a jar of garlic sauce, and suddenly everything was in Technicolor. Elena felt her throat tighten. Technicolor is messy, Mark. It stains. I know, he said. I like the stains. They prove we were there. He took a deep breath. He reached into his pocket. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Mark, wait, you don't have to. I do, he interrupted gently. I really do. He didn't kneel. The floor was dirty, and he was practical. Instead, he leaned against the shelf of spaghetti, looking her dead in the eye. Elena, I found the shelves in the trash can, he said. Elena blinked. What? The shelves, you threw them out before you left. You think you can't build things. You think you're just the person who breaks things. He pulled the box out. It was simple, vintage, and perfect. But look at us, he said. Look at Leo, she's confident because of you. She wears capes to school because you told her it was power attire. She laughs when she spills milk because you taught her it's not the end of the world. You didn't break this family, Elena. You built it. You're the glue. You're the messy, chaotic, wonderful glue that holds us together. He opened the box. The ring was beautiful, a gold band with a stone that wasn't quite a diamond. Maybe a sapphire, something durable and unique. I don't want someone to watch from the sidelines, Mark said, his voice cracking slightly. I want someone to be in the mess with me. I want the person who drops the jar, because that's the person who knows how to help me clean it up. He took her hand. Elena, will you make a mess with me for the rest of our lives? Elena looked at him. She looked at the ring. She looked at the kale on the floor. The narrative in her head, no one wants to date me, didn't just fade. It evaporated. I'm going to accidentally teach our future children how to pick locks. I'm counting on it, Mark smiled. Then yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely yes, he kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted like the future. It was steady and exciting and full of promise. And because it was them, disaster struck. As Elena threw her arms around his neck, her elbow swung out. It hit the shelf. Specifically, it hit a glass jar of premium Alfredo sauce. They broke apart just as the jar hit the floor. Smash, white sauce splattered everywhere. It hit Mark's nice boots. It hit the hem of Elena's dress. It pooled around the kale. A stockboy at the end of the aisle put his head in his hands. Elena froze. The old shame flared for a microsecond, the heat, the panic. She looked at the mess. Then she looked at Mark. Mark looked down at his boots, now coated in creamy white sauce. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a loud, booming laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. He laughed until he had to lean against the shelf for support. Alfredo, he gasped. We're diversifying. Elena felt a bubble of laughter rise in her own chest. It started small and then erupted, joining his. She laughed until her sides hurt, until the tears on her face were happy ones. I told you, she wheezed. I told you I was a hazard. You're a hazard I'm willing to insure, Mark said, wiping a spot of sauce from her cheek with his thumb. Come on, let's find a mop. We're pros at this. Epilogue. 6 months later, the wedding was small, held in a garden that was surprisingly resilient. Leo, the flower girl, had decided to forego the traditional basket of petals. Instead, she was tossing handfuls of confetti she had made by putting construction paper through a shredder. It was colorful, chaotic, and impossible to clean up. Elena stood under the archway, her dress simple and elegant and miraculously stain-free for the last hour. She held Mark's hands. The efficient Mark's brother cleared his throat. Do you, Mark, take Elena to be your lawfully wedded wife? To have and to hold in sickness and in health, in cleanliness and in chaos? I do, Mark said, squeezing her hands. And do you, Elena? The brother continued, smiling. Take Mark to be your husband? To love and to cherish even when he organizes the spice rack alphabetically? I do, Elena said, her voice clear and strong. Then, by the power vested in me and by the state, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Mark leaned in. He kissed her and the world fell away. There was no anxiety. No fear of the other shoe dropping. Just him and her and the life they had built. As they walked back down the aisle, cheered on by their friends and family, Leo ran up to them. Daddy! Elena, look! She pointed to the reception table. The wedding cake, a three-tiered masterpiece that had cost a fortune, was leaning. It was tilting precariously to the left, mimicking the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Elena's eyes widened. Did I bump the table? No, Leo beamed. I wanted to see if the cake was soft, so I poked it, a lot. The cake groaned, and then with slow, majestic dignity, the top tier slid off and landed on the grass with a wet thud. The guests gasped. Elena stopped. She looked at the ruined cake. She looked at the horrified caterer. She felt Mark's hand tighten around hers. She looked up at him. He was grinning. Well, Mark said, it wouldn't be our wedding without a little gravity. Elena picked up her skirt. She walked over to the fallen tier of cake. She dipped her finger into the frosting and tasted it. "Lemon," she said. "It's delicious." She held out a finger full of frosting to Mark. He licked it off without hesitation. "Perfect," he agreed. "Group hug," Leo shouted, slamming into their legs. They stood there in the grass, eating fallen cake, surrounded by laughter, watching the sun set on the best day of their lives. Elena realized that she had spent so much time worrying that no one wanted to date her, she had almost missed the truth. Dating was just the audition. The real prize was ungetting the part. It was finding the person who didn't mind if you knocked over the scenery, as long as you were standing next to them when the curtain came down. "So?" Elena said, wiping frosting on Mark's nose. "What's next? Honeymoon?" "Ideally," Mark said. "Ideally somewhere with plastic cups." "Deal," Elena said. And as they walked off toward the music, Elena didn't trip. But if she had, she knew exactly who would be there to catch her.